Continuing our popular Ireland on the Fly Masterclass series, this July we're delighted to be joined by Peter Driver of Piscari-Fly, who will be giving a masterclass on the dry dropper technique for river brown trout.
At the height of the summer, there's no better way to target river trout than with the deadly combination of dry fly and nymph underneath. Whether they're taking on top or subsurface, Peter Driver will be giving invaluable tips and advice.
For river trout anglers, this will be a must-see webinar on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Tickets cost €10 and go to www.irelandonthefly.com/masterclass to register today. Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. You may not be into competition fishing, but when the FIPS-Mouche World Championships are on, surely you can't help but wonder how the Irish team fared when pitting itself against the best in the world at fly fishing on rivers and lakes. This year the Worlds were held in the south of France, where John Buckley, the Killarney angler, was the team captain. And while we might not be expected to medal going up against the likes of the French and the Spanish, the Irish team went out, as always, with high hopes. John will be telling us how they fared in just a bit, as well as telling us about his own fly fishing life around the lakes of Killarney and beyond. But first, Tom, I did want to actually talk to you about salmon, first off. And in terms of, I don't know if you've seen the news, what the Norwegian government introduced in the last week or two about closing certain salmon rivers in Norway to all fishing for the next few weeks as a kind of an emergency measure because of the drastic drop off in terms of the salmon run that's been seen. It's obviously causing a lot of discussion from salmon anglers. I know Johnny Casey was posting on Instagram. He was flying over to Norway and was affected by it as well, and he was just basically saying that the run that they'd seen, was never as bad, just talking to locals and just how we're in dire straits now because of what's going on.
Yeah, I hadn't heard too much of it, and just till I was talking to you there a couple of days ago. It's kind of frightening because, we all know about the problems salmon, particularly in this country, and particularly after a bad year last year. But people still here will talk about, oh God, well, I wouldn't mind going over to Norway, because it still seems as one of those destination venues to go and catch salmon. To hear that the Norwegians are now having problems, it's kind of frightening, isn't it?
It is, and actually I might include the link. Actually, I think people should read. There's a very good blog post by Matt Hayes. He was involved with a salmon lodge on the Gowla.
He was, wasn't he? Yeah, he'd moved to Norway.
Yeah, exactly. And the Gowla was one of those affected, and he's written a blog post about this just in terms of the effect on it. And he was actually warning about this last year. He said because he blames it on the mismanagement of the river and the salmon run there. He particularly pinpoints the lack of catch and release, or the lack of a culture towards catch and release that's going on there, saying that too many fish are being killed. And interestingly, actually, Johnny Casey's post as well, he's talking about in terms of kind of more catch and release is needed, and not just in Norway but in Ireland as well. And it's funny how all this stuff kind of comes around. There was actually Ken Whelan sent out a press release as well from Salmon Watch Ireland, basically talking about call for action for new salmon conservation measures needed. And one of the things he was pinpointing was, he also said, and I'm just going to quote here directly, we request that salmon of over 65 centimetres be released and no fish should be harvested in September. You'd be lucky to catch a fish in September, I'd argue, at this stage anyway. But basically, I think they called it in the Atlantic Salmon Trust the gift. Give the gift back to the river in terms of if you've caught the salmon, give it back. So there's a real kind of, I get that sense of, it's amazing when we had the positivity and the optimism of Sean McLaughlin's episode a couple of weeks ago. But when you see what's happening in Norway, there's almost despair now in the air in terms of people are just, last year was bad. They're saying this year has gotten even worse. And where will it end, I suppose? And people are trying to just, call for action where they can, whether it's, just encouraging catch and release or, just trying to highlight management of the rivers, anything that can be done. You almost get the sense that people are now scrambling, which is never a good sign.
Yeah, I, I wouldn't use the word desperation is the wrong word to use, but I know what you mean by scrambling. It's people are looking for avenues, that are looking for somewhere to grab that we can go to and get some hope from doing it. But yeah, it's sort of reached that stage where you sort of have to sort of wonder what's going to happen. I mean, first of all, what's going to happen with the future?
But for me though, Tom, like I read the post, say from the Norwegian government, where they're saying it's a heavy heart that we have to close these rivers, right? Why aren't they looking at why the salmon run was so bad in the first place? It's because of 40 years of the development of aquaculture in these bays and these estuaries where these salmon rivers are running into. So like, it's like,
well, there might be a very simple answer to that, in that Norway and Norwegian companies are heavily invested and involved with salmon farming and aquaculture.
but the hypocrisy of the government and the ministers, we say, oh, with a heavy heart, we announce that we must close these rivers, to save the salmon population. Well, if you wanted to save the salmon population, you should have get your head out of your arse for the last 40 years, and looked at the science of what was happening.
And listened to the science, Yeah, but no, they didn't. But um, I know what you're saying there, Matt Hayes, mismanagement. I mean, not just at the rivers, that's mismanagement at a higher scale, at a much higher scale. That's right at the top.
And there's so many levels, like, and I know, you'd have the IFI here talking about, their focus is on habitat and conservation and and what you can do in terms of the fresh water. Mm. Then we have all the other problems out there in terms of what's happening in the ocean. Then you have the problems with aquaculture. And now, we have the other issue, of other organisations highlighting the need for catch and release. There's like so many disparate elements to it that are it's just all coming together, I think.
Yeah, and look, some anglers would say, anglers once, bear the brunt of this, and have to resolve to catch release, and it's not necessarily their fault. So why should they be blamed for it? But I think you've got to look at a broader picture than beyond that, as, let's say, an angler, and then think of the whole scope, the whole thing of what's happening at the moment, and that, all right, mightn't solve it, because, as you said, there's a lot more problems further afield than just in the rivers, but it's got to go some way towards helping it.
Well, I think it's always, look, what can you do? That's what I always bring it back to. What can you do, right?
And that's
if I catch a salmon, can I release it? Don't eat farmed salmon.
Yeah. We can't do anything. Dara Whelan and Tom Sullivan can't do anything about what's happening in the high seas, about the water temperatures changing, the feed of the salmon changing, going further north or whatever. But what can we do? That's a really pertinent question. What can we do? And that is one thing we can do.
Yeah, and look, this is an issue, Tom, I do want to cover. I think we should probably cover in the next week or two on the podcast. I'd like to speak to maybe Johnny or any Irish anglers that were out in Norway, just to get the experience. They spoke to locals, just to really hear what it was like on the ground. And I think it would make for a really an interesting discussion to find out more about that. So maybe stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll be able to cover it in the next few weeks. So, but first, look, let's get back to this week's guest anyway, John Buckley, to tell us more about how the Irish team performed at the World Championships in France last week.
They done very well as a team. They finished 6th overall. We had four of the Irish anglers were in the top 25, 17th, 19th, 23rd and 25th. Out of 115 anglers, that's a good showing over the 5 days in what were very difficult conditions. And it's great to see that many of the Irish team that high up on the board. That comes down now to a bit of consistency that's after coming into the team. There's a couple of young lads who have qualified for the last 2 years, and actually they're qualified again for next year. So we'll have about 3 of the 5 fishing would have fished together this year and last year as well. And it's great. It's a young men's game, and Tom Dock is there. I think we're about the same age, but he'll tell you the same. It really is a young man's game now. You know, it takes a lot of effort. You need to be fit, you know, and you need to be on top of your game. And what happened in France was absolutely crazy. The way that some of the sessions were laid out, you know, so we can get into that in a minute if you want. You know.
Yeah, explain that to us, John.
Well, we had 2 lake sessions, right? 2 days of lakes because it was more than 2 sessions. They would have been bussed up a mountain. Then they would have had to have walked another hour and a half hike uphill, up the mountain to get to the lakes. Yeah, it's absolutely, it was crazy. I mean, crazy. And then they would fish. They'd get to the lakes. They'd fish one lake for an hour, and they would have 45 minutes to get to the next lake. That subsequently was changed on the second day to an hour because the lakes were so far apart. After your hour and a half to 2 hours hike up the mountain, you fish for an hour, you hike for another 45 minutes to another lake, you fish that for an hour, then you hike to another lake for 45 more minutes and fish that, and then you could either be hiking another 45 minutes up the mountain to fish your last session, and then you'd have to hike the 2.5 hours back down to meet the bus to take you back to base. It was absolutely crazy. So it was.
It's like something from the Marines, like, you know.
Well, I don't think the SAS would have trained as hard anyway. So that's one thing for sure. I mean, even some of the controllers had to pull out, you know, and that said something.
Did you know about this beforehand?
Yeah, but we kind of naively thought when there was a mention of buses, you know, that we'd be bussed up, and the only hiking would be on the plateaus where the lakes were, which didn't turn out to be plateaus because the lakes were at all different levels and stuff. So it came as I won't say came as a shock, you know, but how actually hard it was going to be did, you know.
But like you must have been going nuts. Like, were you talking to the organisers, going, "What the hell are you at?" Like?
Yeah, I think every team was. I mean, look, some people were equating it to triathlon rather than angling competition. You know, instead of cycling, you were being bussed, but then you had to walk and then you had to fish. Some of them even had to take a swim. You know. Just from sheer exhaustion, but it was crazy. But look, I mean, that's what was agreed with the organisers. So,
but basically, then, John, what you're saying, like anybody who went out there who wasn't physically fit,
and then the heat as well.
Deep trouble,
Well, it was very warm. Now, most of the time up on top of the mountains, because you're up a huge mountain, you're up a huge distance. It was either overcast or drizzling and stuff. But unfortunately for some of our anglers, it was blazing sunshine. I mean, we were down in the valley one day, it was 35.5 degrees. God only knows what it was up there, you know, without the cloud to be seen. But no, you're right there. There was a lot of substitutions made by teams that their anglers just physically weren't able to do it. Like I said, when the controllers were pulling out, they were just walking up with their lunch. The lads were walking up with all their gear and everything else.
You have to cart all your rods and all your stuff.
Yeah.
And you need, I mean, for the lake sessions, like you're going to have, most of the guys are carrying 2 or 3 rods at least, aren't they,
minimum. That's minimum now. Yeah, usually going to the lakes now, they're probably taking 5 to 6 rods, taking a rod holder with them, taking all those reels, different lines. It's ludicrous.
You and I know it. Let's say, I mean, you probably done it, and I did it, where we'd hike up the hill and to fish a mountain lake. We'd bring 1 rod.
Oh, and that's exactly it. And I might as well be honest and upfront, because I had a procedure on my back a number of years ago. There's no way I went up to the lakes. Now, getting up, I would have struggled if I got there. It's coming down would have caused me the biggest difficulty. And everyone I was talking to after, even the fittest of lads, was saying it was actually the coming down, you know, trying to stop yourself from falling and what have you, was the hardest thing. So, you know, all credit to the other 5. I just didn't do it.
Tell me this, can I just ask one thing? What was the fishing like in the lakes?
It actually was quite good. So it was, and there were wild fish, no different to what you'd have in Connemara or Kerry, Tom.
Yeah.
Just, you know, those wild mountain lakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Black flies, nymphs. I love things like that. And it was like looking at the trout here in the mountain lakes at home, and plenty of them.
Can I ask you, did the French team, did they know of the physical exertion that was needed?
Oh, they did, of course. I mean, they organised it, and I'm sure every step of the competition was organised in conjunction with the French team. You know, look, every country that hosts it will try and give themselves some sort of an advantage within the law. If it was me organising an island tomorrow morning, I'd do a Jackie Kynet and do 5 lakes and off you go. You know what I mean? And it worked for him. And it is an advantage. You can gain an advantage as the host nation.
So tell us, John. Right. So how did the fishing go overall then for individuals and for the team? Like, were you happy or?
Oh, yeah, I mean, in fairness, look, there was 5 anglers out there. Every one of them left it on the pitch. I mean, they really, really dug in. The way they run them now, they run it over 5 days. It used to be 3 days, and you do a morning session and an evening session. You do one session maybe the following day and then 2 the last day. Now they do it over 5 days. But what they do now is you fish 2 hours in the morning. Then you get an hour off. You do a rotation onto another beat. So it's actually, instead of 3 hour sessions, it's done into 2 hour sessions, the 4 hour session technically. Now it's scored as one session, but you do get to fish 2 different venues. So each of the venues, you kind of got a half decent beat and a tough beat. Now some were better than others, some were less tough than others, some were a lot tougher than others. But look, you can only fish the water that's in front of you. Individually, like I said at the start, we had 4 inside the top 25. And anyone that fishes these competitions, it's like a game of snakes and ladders. You could be up there 1 minute, bad result, and you're out of the competition, as was evident with 1 or 2 of the top anglers who done kind of first, second, third in the first 3 sessions and had a useless 4th session, and they're just completely gone out of the medals and stuff. So it's like you're fishing for wild fish, no different than you are here. And they're not like your stock fish. I mean, these guys are war ready, you know what I mean? They know what's coming, they know what's lurking, they know what to avoid. They'll see you long before you'll ever see them. So it's very difficult fishing. We had 3 lads under the age of 30, which is Sean Dempsey, top class angler, Kieran Riley, top class angler, and young Robert Hackett. He's only 22, but an absolute star of an angler as well. So. And then we had Michael Drinan, and 43 years of age. The eldest on the team was William Tanner at 55. So while I did say at the outset it was a young man's game, William was fantastic. He was up and down the mountain, no problem, never complained once, and left it all on the pitch the same as everybody else. So like to finish 6th out of 24 teams it's huge achievement for Ireland. Because of I remember Dick Connell on your show, and Dick was going on about the qualifying system and stuff. And Tom, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were on teams together, we were having the same conversations. The system has to change. It has to be brought more in line with the competition they're going fishing, kind of a session based. Now, there has been improvements where there's 2 sessions. I think next year's 3 sessions or 4 sessions, So what you will find is you'll have a consistency of anglers qualifying. It may be the same faces for 2 or 3 years at a time, but so be it. If that's what it takes for Ireland to do well at these competitions, well, that's what actually needs to happen. It's like for years we've always. I remember going in looking at the results at the end of every day and going back over the years, and I never once started at the top of the sheet. I always started at the bottom and worked my way up, because that's traditionally where we were. That was turned on its head this year. I think we surprised the whole competition, the amount of different countries they came up and were congratulating us, and even the organisers of the competition, they're doing very well. And I mean, Sean Dempsey knocked Delicat.
That's right.
By 1 centimetre, knocked him off the gold medal position. We didn't think we'd get Sean out of France alive.
He did. He knocked him off, and didn't he have the same number of fish or something? He had the same number of fish.
And it was
I'm looking at the result. So, and he knocked him because he was, and Pierre Cons came in and stole it. So he won. He won on the lakes. He finished top on the lakes.
He did, and he retained it. He defended the gold medal because he won it last year. Pierre. So even they were doing the maths while they were on the bus, and they had Sean in a 3rd place. And they were celebrating, Delicat getting the gold and what have you. But then when the official results came out, different kettle of fish. No, it was his teammate that took the gold medal off him. No, so, that's a right big mixed bag of emotions. Are you kind of going, who am delighted for you, you prick? Or are you kind of, you know what I mean? But like I said,
happy.
We put a bit of Teflon around Sean, and we had to watch his back for the night in the following morning to make sure he got out.
Since, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a fourth in 95, but that was in Ireland.
And that was in Ireland.
And that was in Ireland. So this is the best result in a World Championship since.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the best result we've had away from home. And I don't like to make different equations, but we had grayling in this competition, which we didn't have in 95. There's there was wild rainbows in this competition, and of course the different wild browns then as well. But it's just a huge achievement for the team. And you will have the scoffers and the knockers at 6 to what are you celebrating, you know what I mean? But for anyone that's been there, numerous times, Tom, you've been there numerous times, it's not easy, to finish inside the top 10 because, you're as I said, I mentioned grayling. That's a species we don't have in Ireland. The nearest grayling we have is Wales, you know what I mean? So anyone that wants to fish for grayling goes to Wales to fish from, but you still don't go there enough, to succeed at them, rather than the local. So,
John, can I ask, what was your expectations or hopes going in? Were you hoping for maybe a top 10? That'd be your best.
A top 10, look, that's all we've ever hoped for, was a top 10, but looking at the team before it went out, I was confident of a top 10. And that's, it's kind of a brave thing to say. But because I had been on the team with both Kieran and Sean last year, I know exactly what they're capable of doing. I knew what Robert's capable of doing, and Michael Drinan is probably the most captain angler in the country. I know exactly what he's capable of doing. William was a bit of a dark horse. I hadn't known William whatsoever before the competition, but he turned out to be a great lad and a good angler who gave everything. So it was like we finished second after day one. Now, we were actually in disbelief, you know what I mean? We were kind of saying, is that after the first rotation or of the morning session or whatever, but it was. But when the score started to come in and then came in right throughout the week, we were fairly consistent right throughout the week of kind of mid top 10 finishes, or the latter third of the top 10 finish and the individuals. And the one thing about this competition, it is such a game of snakes and ladders that you could have 3 session wins and end up with 3 points. And then you can get a bad beat and end up with 18 points. You're completely out of the medals. You're completely out of the race for anything. We were fairly consistent right throughout in terms of fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths. So to do well at these competitions, it's consistency and it's low points constituency. Like first gets 1 point, 2 is 2 points, third is 3 points. So anyone that's at, fifth and sixth and stuff like that. And if you're not going to medal with those. You're not going to get first, second, or third individuals. But we always treat this as a team event rather than individual. If an individual gets a medal, it's usually because of the team anyway. So if you can get consistently low or mid top 10 finishes for the whole team, you're looking good to be finished high up. I mean, we were 3 place points away from fifth place. We were actually 35 points away from bronze medal. Now, anyone that knows this game, that's 2 bad results for an angler. It could be a flooded river, it could be a high river, it could be, and that's how tight the margins are here. So while you can drop a huge amount of places, you can actually gain a huge amount of places as well with a solitary good result.
Who was the highest placed Irish angler? Where did they come?
Sean Dempsey in 17th, Michael Drinan on 19th, Robert Hackett on 23rd, and Kieran Riley on 25th. And I'm dead if I didn't get those positions right. But I think that's where they were anyway. So, but we would have always had an angler within the top 20, but one of 5. This time to have 4 within the top 20 to 25. Sean Dempsey, I think, done was it 13 2 years ago. Dave Coughlin done 11th last year. So to finish get 4 within the top 25 is absolutely astronomical for us.
That augurs well for the future, doesn't it, John?
Well, it does. I mean, look at the Czech Republic next year. 3 of the team are already qualified. Kieran Riley, Sean Dempsey, Michael Drinan, who've already fished the last couple of years together, are now also in this team. Dennis O'Leary is joining him. Dennis is a good angler and fishes both disciplines, lake and river. I'm not 100% sure yet who the fifth angler is. I've heard the name. I just want to say it in case it's not right. And if it is him, he's also a competent angler. So I think, building on the result from this year, I think they'll do very well next year as well. And I think young Robert Hackett has made the European team for next year as well. So, it's the consistency starting to come through because the qualifier is being split into sessions. Now, if they extend that into a couple of more sessions, what you'll find is you'll get a high level of multidisciplined anglers coming through that can fish basically rivers, lakes, or whatever, either stocked or wild or whatever's in front of them.
Can I ask you, John? Obviously, the French won. They won the team and they won the individual.
Yeah,
and they won by a good margin. Just I was glancing at it.
Yeah, they always do.
So what? Okay, and obviously they were in France, so they would have been favourites as well, and they were coming back off being champions. What is it? And I'm always fascinated with what is it about them that just makes them the gap so big?
I would have said teamwork, practice and all that, but natural ability would be one of them, right? I mean, they get plucked at a young age. If they show any bit of form at all, they're actually, I won't say headhunted, but they are identified as, as a prospect, and, they'll do camps and stuff like that. Now, if you had seen the fishing that we had for the last 5 days, you can actually understand why the French are so good. These things don't give up. I mean, these fish, are hard to catch, and if you're practicing on waters that has hard fish, you're doing different tactics, you're trying new stuff, and I'm talking from the size of hooks to the size of the fly, to the size of the bead, to the size of the dry fly, they have it all down to a T, and if you could do that on the waters we were fishing, which are very, very hard, it just got, when you hit a river that's stuffed with fish, well then, they're absolutely going to wipe it out. And the Spanish are the same. The Spanish have very, very difficult fishing, and here they are, year on year, either first or second for the last 4, 5, 6 years. And that's because, they practice in, we probably wouldn't go out, let's call a spade a spade. If you thought, I have to fish for the next 3 hours to maybe meet 5 fish, if you go to any river in Ireland and you're hitting 5 fish, within half an hour, and if you don't, it's a bad evening's fishing or a bad session. So, but they do put in an awful lot of practice, and they do an awful lot of teamwork as well, which is, crucial to take. And they have the consistency. You look at the French team, Pierre Kuntz won it last year. He's on the team. Gregor is on the team. Delacaire is on the team. It's the same anglers coming coming through the whole time, and they do what I'd like to see happen. They do kind of a league-based system. Where they might fish 5 or 6 different competitions, say 6, and pick your best 5 results. 2 of those would have to be lake, tree, or river, or something like that. And doing it that way gives you an opportunity to have a bad day. And that way you discard that. And they do something like that, and they have 2 divisions. They have the division, the Premier Division, we call it, in Division 1. And, so they have the world team and the European team. And England are doing something similar now as well. They run off 5 or 6 competitions, kind of on a points-based system. And they have kind of an A and a B. So the top 6 go to the world, and the 12 qualified. The top 6 is the world team, and the European team is the second 6. So everyone is kind of looking at that model to bring consistency to the teams now. Because our way of doing it is like you could go out, you could win the World Championships. One of the lads could have won the World Championships the next week. They're fishing the national rivers in 2 weeks' time. They may get a bad beat, and that they could blank. And everyone's going to say, how do you win the World Championships? You know what I mean? So it's you're taking the lucky one day out of it, and you're putting in a system that consistency pays off, and results pay. It'll be a results-based system, basically,
I think that's very important, and it's true what you say, John. I mean, you really want consistency to be rewarded, and to take out 2 things: take out the lucky day and the unlucky day.
Yes,
and then over a period. And it's good to see that. I mean, you said it at the start there, and we know from 10, 15 years ago. Like anything, sometimes it's hard to get change in, but it's good to see that there's a bit coming in, and results like what we had, we had an Irish team, what we had last week was great. And like as you said already, you've seen that with them actually going to a couple of sessions rather than just one day, one session. You
That's
know,
it.
that
Yeah.
was, it was a bit of harem scarum like that. But no, it's brilliant to hear. I'm delighted to hear
Yeah.
that.
Well, now, look, that has to be approved and everything, but I know it is being worked on. And as I said, they have made inroads into it already with 2 and 3 sessions
Yeah, yeah.
in the qualifiers. Because, look, we can all have a bad day. It's no matter what sport you can have an off day. But with angling, it's, you might be feeling well, or you could just get a bad beat of water. You hit Loch Corrib and it's absolutely flat cam. And if you don't know the tactics for cam water fishing, you're wasting your time there. And it's a huge step forward. Look, I'm not going to mention names. I was actually only talking about you, Tom, while we were over there, of an incident that happened on a team we were on many years ago. It was either Slovakia or Slovenia, I think. And you were asked to fish off against. There was, sorry, not you. There was 2 people asked to fish off against
There was
each
2
other.
people. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
So we won't
yeah,
mention names of who it was, not to
yeah, yeah,
embarrass
there was.
anybody,
Yeah,
which was a ludicrous thing, and there was uproar in the team at the time.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but that's no way to do business. You know what I
No,
mean? So, thankfully, after that episode, it changed that the reserve would be the reserve.
yeah,
And he would
yeah.
only fish if someone either was capable of fishing it
Right.
or got
Yeah,
injured, or you know what I
yeah.
mean. So. As bad an experience as that was, some good came of it. But look, I think we're moving on a lot more from that now, and it's like I said, the goodwill that was shown towards us over there by many, many countries, it kind of, oh, Ireland has finally arrived, that's kind of like what it felt like, and they're not seeing us as journeymen or making up the numbers now, and I reference Sean taking taking Delicare out by 1 centimetre, but that's exactly where we're at now. Like Sean, he didn't take him from 9th to 10th or 11th to 12th. He took him from 2nd into 3rd. So Sean finished 2nd in the session, So kudos to Sean for doing it. Huge effort. He didn't go out and specifically target the men. You know what I mean? But there was the consequences of competition. This is what happens, and especially over a 5-day competition. 5-day points based competition. So. That was huge. So it was.
And I think as well, John, is the bar has been set now. 6th.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to see them, and I'm not saying it would, but the pressure's on them now next year that they have to try and attain that or maintain that level. Like,
I mean, look, all the anglers drop fish during the week. It happens. That's the nature of the beast. I was going through the results last night, and as I said, we were 3 points behind.
I'd say, are you going over them with the fight?
It's like looking at the mark register after the election. That bastard told me what it, but it's, you're kind of looking at it and you're going, oh, if we had got that one, if he'd lended those 2, and then it's specifically M&A, any angler, it happens to.
You were looking at the Carsabine box, were you?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. You're kind of going, but you're kind of looking at it and you're going, right, well, we should now be 5th. And then you go from 5th, you're going, hold on a minute now. What happened here that we didn't finish 4th? You know what I mean? So, but look, like I said, I'm absolutely delighted for the lads. It's, there was some very good points about the competition, some very low points that we had to put up around the competition, but I'm absolutely thrilled for them. They gave it everything, I mean, like, without whinging a bit, it costs a lot of money to go there, right? And if I hear someone mention how good the chefs and the cuisine is in France, I'll probably end up headbutting them, because I do know that ourselves and at least 9 other teams never once. After the first time we didn't go back to the meals. We actually ended up going to the shop and doing self-catering for ourselves. The food was that bad. And like, I love my grub, don't get me wrong, but when you're running up and down a mountain and I was working it out this morning, it's half an hour on a bus, an hour and a half to an hour and 3/4 climb, then another 3.5 hours of climbing between fishing sessions, and another 2 hours down the mountain after. That's 7 hours of climbing, and the food was absolutely atrocious. When I say atrocious, I can't actually exaggerate in that. And it turned out the breakfast was the same. So we actually ended up, we used to set our alarm clocks we were up every morning, at 4:30, had the breakfast, and we were on the road at 5:00 every morning to go back up to headquarters to meet the buses and stuff like that. And I've been receiving emails for the last 2 days from different teams, basically saying, look, we've put this in. We know you had concerns yourselves. Could you send in a letter of complaint as regards? So as it doesn't happen again, you can't put the bullet back in the chamber. It's happened. It's done now. You know what I mean? So it's just to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it was terrible. And now the competition was a fantastically run competition. No, between, controllers, buses, beats, everything was absolutely 100%. And it was just a pity that left it all down, because people need their nutrition. They need to eat well. You know what I mean? They're burning a lot of calories throughout the day. You can imagine in 35 degrees and, running around the river or climbing mountains. That's not it's not something you need to keep your strength up on, and it's a thing that none of us would have ever affected. I'm going fishing for the day. You don't say, "There are my flies. There's my reel. Where's my pasta and my." You know what I mean? It's kind of you took a sandwich and that was it. So a lot of teams were giving out that the food let them down, and it would have played in their heads a big part on the results they would have finished on as well. So
that's something you have to deal with, and that leads me on to ask you there, John, because I know. Like I've been on a couple of them. I know Dick mentioned it last year. I presume you had a tough role again as captain going to all these meetings. I mean, your time is just chock-a-block out there with all these meetings.
It's stupid. And for my sins, they made me a member of this international jury for the duration of the competition, which you have to, on top of meetings, you have to listen to every stupid complaint known to men. And then you go to the meeting and they tell you, well, it's not really a complaint. I just want to make you aware of it. So you're we were kind of 10 minutes away from the venue, so I used to have to drive up and down there a couple of nights to sort stuff like that. But Tom, it wasn't a bad competition for it. It was the venues were difficult, the fishing was difficult. Everybody knew that. There was very few complaints. The food was actually, people were complaining about that. Yeah. There was complaints about when an angler got his beat, there was someone else there fishing, a local who just, I'm local, so forget the sign, that kind of a thing, or a bit of disrespect by a controller towards an angler. But there was nothing major. It was fairly okay, and the rules are fairly set in stone. You know what I mean, as well now. They've got a good handle on those over the years, so there's usually an answer to a problem before it actually arises now. When there's not, that's when the work, there's a bit of work to go into it. But other than that, no, it was fairly okay this time. And I recognise an awful lot of the captains out there this year, so who would have been anglers as well down through the years, so they would know the run of it, and so it makes things a lot easier. If you have a bit of experience in that type of stuff, it does make it a lot easier. Cuts an awful lot of the mixing out.
Speaking of experience, John, let's talk about your own fly fishing career and background. You'd be well known, as I said at the start. To actually start us off with, did you get into the competition scene fairly on in your fly fishing career?
Yeah, I did. Look, I was born with a rod. What my mum and dad fished. I didn't have a choice. I was genetically programmed to fish. I'd love to have done something else, but I didn't. I ended up fishing. So would have got my first salmon when I was 9 years of age. I remember vividly, 17th of January 1979. I got a rod for Christmas. It was my first day out. Took the day off school.
And where was this, John? Just to tell people.
That was in the Long Range River in Killarney. And I remember I got £6 a pound for it. You know what I mean? So that was 60 quid. Well, it was 12, so it was 72 quid I got. I don't think my father was even earning that in 1979 for a week's wages. But I remember buying the rod for £12 for my Christmas money. And the very next day that rod went out was the following week. My brother got 3 salmon with it. But we used to have a huge run of fish that time in January, so it was there was plenty of them above. So yeah, didn't want to fish an awful lot of the lakes, lake competitions and stuff. Didn't get into the river. Kind of 2005. I think you were in Sweden, Tom, myself and yourself.
Yeah, it was 2005. Yeah.
That would have been the first time that I would have really taken an interest in the rivers, because seeing what was going on out there, kind of saying, "Holy, we're wasting our time here with our little buckets of wet flies and stuff like that." So I took a keen interest in it. Hit the rivers as soon as I came back, and I haven't looked back since. I've qualified. I think it's 14 times now with Taffy over the years, taken the national river, national lake, took the Masters, so I have 3 national titles under my belt, which I'm very proud of, by the way. It's not everyone can do it. So yeah, and I still love it now. I love it, actually love it more. As they said, the mind is willing, but the body is not able. It's the problem. But like again, when I see what went on this week, and the 320-year-olds absolutely just nailed it. It just really brings it home that it's moved on an awful lot. Fishing and the technique moves on every couple of years. There's the next new thing, or there's another method. Like one of Michael Dryan had said to me, but the wheel is still round. You can't reinvent the equipment, but you can change the way you drive. You can change your tactics a bit, and there's totally different methods, and gear is getting so light now as well. I remember going to the Corrib, actually. It was in flood. You were actually in the beat below me, Tom, and I think that was 2006 or something like that. And I got two fish on, I'll never forget it, 12-pound nylon, and a 4 mil hare's ear tungsten bead, and going into an idiot. But again, like that, just not knowing, exactly how to deal with water like that. So that's when I really started taking an interest in it, and started looking at different methods and different ways of basically taking fish, and then try and perfect that, and then take it further on. I was never an innovator. I was always a copier. You know what I mean? As the fella sitting in front of me in school, it was, I'd always have a look at what everyone else was doing, and try and tweak that to suit me if what they were doing didn't work. So yeah, it's I've seen all of it.
After Sweden in 2005, I remember you saying that you were going to concentrate on the rivers.
Yeah.
And just to ask you, no more than myself, you're based in Killarney, you're not blessed with a lot of trout rivers close by. So or are you? Yeah. Or did you just use what you had around you?
No, I've
concentrate on it.
See, the Flesk River that runs is probably the best practice river you could get for anywhere. It's steep gradient, it's got pot water, it's got flat water, I can fish nymphs, dry, wet, streamers. So if I'm going to a competition and I know what the water is going to be like, I will pick the parts of the Flesk that will suit, Now, if it's very small rivers, I can go to you might laugh at this, but I go to the River Deanoch that runs past the cathedral, right? It's 15 feet wide, you know what I mean? It's a tight overhanging river, small fish, but, as you well know, Tom, it's not every country is blessed like Ireland. So we do have to fish these small little rivers, as we call them, kind of nursery streams and stuff, where there's a lot of 20 centimetre trout. And the Fleston again was also hugely important for wading, because, as I said, steep gradient, rocks are very slimy, you'd slip all over the place. So it was a good way to get used to bad underfoot terrain, and plus when it was flooded, you're getting into deep, fast water. So it also helped with that as well, and it holds a good head of trout. Difficult at times, but it's just a very, very good practice river. So that's kind of where I kind of honed the skills, and then I started doing a lot of the evening competitions and in the different parts of the province, trying different waters and stuff like that. And it's there's an awful lot of it comes to you subconsciously. You just do stuff now that you just do. You don't know why you do it. You're just doing it. It results with a trout on the end of the rod, but it's from years of.
Well, you do it, and also you have the confidence doing it.
The confidence in doing it, and that's it. Because I remember coming back from Sweden, and the following morning, I think I hit the river, and I spent 4 days with, again, naivety. I was using just ordinary beads, not tungsten, didn't know nothing about it, and weighted them down with a bit of lead and stuff. And I remember going 4 days without even touching the fish. I remember one of the old lads was passing up, and he was laughing at me, you know what I mean? And it was a fair dent to my confidence, I can tell you. But then on the Saturday, just whatever I changed, I think I had 15 trout. And in the first 2 hours of doing it, I kind of went, oh, there's something in this. And then it just took off from there for me anyway, so.
John, to be at that level where you're winning titles, how often would you be fishing, during the season?
Oh, I'd be out as soon as I'd be out the minute it opens in February, that time, and probably 5 evenings a week after work, and that would be a mixture of either lake or river. No. Plus, look, you could be doing worse. It wasn't like it was very hard work, you were going fishing, so it was very enjoyable. But to try and compete, you never take it for granted you're going to come out of Ireland. Ireland can be, we've some fantastic anglers in the country, you know what I mean? If we could only get them all together on a consistent basis that we've been talking about, we would medal in a very, very short time at international competitions. because we've been doing it already at the Five Nations and stuff, because I actually have a gold and a silver from the Five Nations as well. So no, they were on in Killarney, so it was kind of easy. But at the same time, you would be fishing 4 and 5 evenings a week, and possibly the Saturday and a Sunday morning as well. You know, you'd have to. I mean, it is very, very tough, and like, you could be the most naturally gifted person going in any sport, but if you don't practice, you know, you're wasting your time. It's as simple as that, you know. And it might sound strange to some people, because it is a very sociable pastime. But if you want to practice and practice good, you know, you will pick someone that's very good and practice with them. But you'll also do an awful lot of it on your own, because you'll be doing stupid things, and you probably don't want people to see you making an ass of yourself, you know. But what I find when I'm on my own, you try stuff that you wouldn't normally try. You know what I mean? And if it works well and good, it's one, you know, you put it into the file and pull it out when needed, you know. So you will, it's not a case of just going fishing to catch fish. That time I would have been going fishing a lot and not catching fish, but not catching fish on purpose. Not on purpose, not wanting to catch it, but because of something I was trying or something I was doing just wasn't working. But you would have to give it X amount of hours to make sure it didn't work.
But it also strikes me, John, when you're saying there you're on the river for 4 days not catching it. But the fact that you keep at it, you know, you're there. I'm dedicated. I'm focused at this. I'm not just here. I'm not messing around. Like, you know, I'm doing this for a reason. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it costs a lot of money to go out and do things. You sacrifice an awful lot. You know, you sacrifice family holidays, the nice car. You know, maybe paying off the mortgage or leave. That's I talk about people that are consistently qualified, because it does. It's probably $2.5 grand a competition. You know. This one was over $2.5 grand actually, which is ludicrous, because we went to Tasmania 4 years ago for less than it, when you think about it, you know. And this is only France, so it's there is a cost factor. And if you're only going in there kind of mediocrity, you're still buying the equipment. All my rods are the Loomis, the GLX. I think anyone that fishes knows those rods. I have 4 of them. If any one of them breaks, it'll be like a debt in the family. But they cost over €1,000 each to buy, and that's just one piece of your equipment. You've rods, you've reels, you've lines, you've clothing, you've flies, you've, you know, all the stuff you replace on a constant basis. So it's not a cheap sport. It can be a cheap sport, you know what I mean? I know great friends of mine have the same rod for 18, 20 years. They're more than happy with it, and that's fine. I don't have an issue with that, you know. But for me, you know, if there's a lighter rod to be had, I want to have the lighter rod. You know what I mean? I want and it's not to do with the cost of it. It's to do with what you need to do with the rod, basically, you know. So.
You mentioned, John, obviously just tackle in terms of improvements and how it's getting lighter. Is there anything else in terms of where you're seeing the way things are going, like even watching the French, what they were doing? Like, do you learn something every championship?
You do. And like, if you ask me what did I learn this thing, I couldn't really tell you, but I will know the minute I go to the river. I don't mean that to be a smart answer.
Or a competition angler's answer.
Yeah, no, Tom, no, say that's the cynic Irish now coming out.
No, that's just
we'll be probably competing against each other next year to try and
that's just another competition angler talking to you.
Yeah, it is. You know, we all love to win. If I never qualified again, it wouldn't bother me, and I genuinely mean that. As much as I would love to, don't get me wrong, I'm not making light of it. I've done it quite a bit. You know, I'm a journeyman angler. I'm never going to be that gold medal winner, but I love the competition scene, you know. But to answer your question, there, everything is getting lighter. The leader is down to next to nothing now. You know, I mean, we were fishing 0.8, which is a pound and a quarter. You know what I mean?
Is that what you're at? 0.8?
0.8 and
0.08. Yeah.
0.08,
yeah.
The largest we went up to, the thickest diameter was 0.10. You know, and that's for the whole week. Nothing bigger than that. Like, you're playing 2 and 3 pound fish on that. Yeah. You know, it's you can't give out the fella when he breaks. No, because it's like the hair on your head. But that has been the leaders is another. The leaders have gone so light now as well. Like the fly lines are now 0.55. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's half a one. You know what I mean? A fly line. So everything is gone lighter. You know, didn't like. But then, I mean, there's a lot of changes over the years. Perdigons are a big thing now, you know. They're not the silver bullet that everyone thinks they are. They get a fly down deep, they'll get it down quick. You know, but a properly weighted fly will do that for you as well. You know, will it catch you more fish over your standard red tag hare's ear or something? I don't think so. I honestly don't, you know. But it has its use. in certain waters, and it's the same as in flies are gone so small. I mean, you're fishing size 24 and 26 dry flies, which you can't even see. You're relying on to see the ripple or the splash in the water now as well. So yeah, it's the rods, everything getting lighter. That's that's where it is at.
Just for an example, there, what was the heaviest weight rod that was used by the lads during the week? Or, was there any 6-weight rods being used?
Well, funny enough, yeah, for the lake, there would have been 5-weight.
Oh, yeah.
And there would have been 5 weights. A 6-weight would have been brought if you were punching it out into the wind or something, which in our time, when we started, would have been an 8-weight,
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it would have been 5 weights for the lake predominantly, but for the river, I don't think anyone went up a 2-weight, up above a 2-weight across any of the teams. So, and the fly line now is your backing. It's not really a fly line anymore. You know what I mean? That's the reality of it. It's the leader is what you're fishing now more than anything else.
Actually, this is completely separate now. I heard, I can't for the life of me think who told me, that they're going to introduce a session in future World Championships where one of them is going to be dry fly only.
No, we haven't been told that.
Ah, Grant. No. I was told that, so I didn't know whether it was true or not.
Yeah,
and by that means that, because if that was brought in again, then people would have to cast again.
They would have to cast again, and that's exactly it. But I think I don't think it's going to happen for a couple of reasons. But the main reason is there's usually a lot of dry fly fishing in World Championships anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, as Dick was telling you last year, there was an awful lot, a huge amount of dry fly fishing. You would have actually not got a fish if you didn't fish a dry fly, no, I don't think
you're still using 2 weights for the dry fly.
And that's exactly it. I mean, you have your clink and dink, your dry dropper rod, right? Yeah. Which is twinning as a dry fly rod anyway now. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's down to 2 and 3 weights as well. So yeah, it's the leaders. It's like we would have even fished a standard tapered leader one time. I don't think whoever's making them is probably gone out of business now because everyone ties their own. And it's 0.16 down to 0.12. You're making up yourself. So it's the whole thing is changing in this year.
And people, you might be into the competition side of it, but I always say is what's happening in the competitions will actually filter down eventually to what's being sold in the shops, to what people are going to be using in the rivers themselves. And maybe not this year, but whenever.
And it won't be eventually; it'll be straight away. If there's something, if something works in the world of Europeans, it's on the shelves, and Tamil attests to that very, very quickly. Yeah. Because there's a lot of the guys involved in the tackle, sponsored by some of the bigger companies, working for the companies, they will see what's going on and say, right, we need to bring this out and we need to stamp our name on it. So, possibly the week after the competition, you're seeing it going into production. So,
and I always say, don't think you're immune to it. You might be into the competition, but the next time you're picking up a rod or somebody's trying to sell you something, it's because of what's been happening.
100%. And if even that goes for the hobbyist or the pleasure angler, he when he goes fishing, as we all do, is to catch fish. He wants to have the best opportunity to do that. And as you said, it's competition that drives it. And I worked in tackle, Tom worked in tackle. It drives the whole market. It doesn't make a difference. It's just that's your bread and butter there.
Classic example is, let's say, the sweep lines. Yeah. After the Four Nations up in the Orkneys. And Wales swept the board because they had sweep lines, and everybody had to have a sweep line. Yeah. After that. Yep. Everybody. Yeah. Yep.
Gareth Jones made a fortune out of it.
He did. Yeah. He did. Fair play to
him. So John, tell us, you've obviously fished so many places, around Ireland internationally. Any favourite places you love to visit or to fish?
Yeah, well, I've seen the world. Sweden, all the Nordic countries, nearly all the Eastern Bloc countries, America. New Zealand and Tasmania, would it possibly be, you can't beat them. So you can't beat them for one reason and one reason. Ireland would beat them for quantity of fish, but not for the quality of fish. Carl would come close to what we were averaging in New Zealand and in Tasmania. But it's the amount of big fish they have is what makes it an angler's dream. So I would go back there tomorrow morning in a heartbeat if I could afford it, I'd be there. Yeah, so that was amazing. I mean, getting 80 fish in a practice session of 2.5-3 hours and you're breaking in 0.12, 0.14, the fish just snapping in you, and you've never seen them. So it's, I remember catching it in 10-pound leader just to stop fish breaking. Now that was practice. You were never going to get those in the competition, but that was just, that's what you had to do, just to hold on to fish.
What about in Ireland, John?
In Ireland?
Yeah, and where do you love fishing in Ireland?
Everywhere, but I love Lochmask. I'm one of those sad individuals that would be happy out in the deeps all day, looking down the right rod. No bother whatsoever. And I do went to the shallows, Tom. Now, don't get me wrong, but I just fancy my chances out there. I don't know what it is. Is it the unknown? I don't know. It's just. But I love I love Killarney. It's where I was born and reared. I was reared with the fish down here. We grew up together, as the man said, and I know where they are when I need to go getting fish. It might not always work out in competition, you know what I mean? But my favourite of all would have been the Waterville Lakes for the sea trout. That would have been before the fish farms took hold again. Now that's an amazing place to be. When you can get a specimen sea trout or a 2 or 3 pound brownie or a salmon, you just don't know what's going to come up to your fly. But Waterville would have been my favourite go-to.
Yeah, it's a very special place.
Yeah, very special place. John, before we let you go, everybody we have on the show, we always ask the same question. So I'm going to ask you there, John, what's your most memorable fish on the fly?
It's going to sound like a cliche, but Tasmania in the World Championships. Yeah. It was 585 centimetres, not colossal, but for what they had. But what it did do, it got me the biggest fish in the competition. So I got the biggest fish in the world, which is my boast, right? That year. And I have a beautiful piece of volcanic timber carved of the fish that they presented to me as the prize for getting the biggest fish. That was the most memorable one for 2 reasons: because it got me that, and because we were fishing out the mouth of a river, and it was in a bit of a flood, and I hooked a fish, decent fish, about maybe 4.5 pounds, and I was fishing 2 flies, and he stuck me in a log, and I sat there. And now you can't waste time in a competition, as you know, right? But I sat there for 5 minutes. I had a Canadian in the boat. He wanted to absolutely throttle me, right? I said, no, I'll get this fish loose. I'll get it loose. After 5 minutes, the fish jumped, and he took off that way in the flies thing. I tied on a fly, cast it out. The very next cast, just on the other side of that log, bang, his partner, my 585 centimetre fish, was there. So, as I said, it got me the biggest fish in the world. They're my words, right? They were that year. So I'll take that. You know what I mean? That's my most memorable fish. Yeah, it was a fish of a lifetime for me.
Well, I think, John, actually, that's the first time, isn't it, of anybody's most memorable fish on the fly to say it was the biggest in the world.
Fish in the world.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. As I said, no, they're my words. There's no official record.
You have a bit of you have a trophy there.
I have a trophy.
You're getting there,
I can show it to you because it's actually there next to it. No, that was that is my most memorable. Yeah,
that's one to remember. All right, and John, thanks a million for joining us, and well done, and congratulations on your involvement with the Ireland team this year in terms of how well they did. And no pressure, lads, but I can't wait to see how they get on in the Czech Republic next year.
No, it'll be fantastic, because one of your previous, Dick Conlon, is the captain. Dick's a fairly experienced international as well. But just to finish off, can I thank the team individually? Mike Trinan, Sean Dempsey, Kieran Riley, Robert Hackett and William Tanner. They were an absolute pleasure to be out there with. Lovely bunch of guys. Left everything on the field, done their clubs, their country, and themselves and their families very proud. And I was delighted to be associated with them, and I was delighted to be associated with the result they got. They thoroughly deserved it. They left everything there, and so it's just fantastic fun.
John, thanks a million.
No problem. Thanks a million, lads.
Our thanks to John Buckley for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.
Continuing our popular Ireland on the Fly Masterclass series, this July we're delighted to be joined by Peter Driver of Piscari-Fly, who will be giving a masterclass on the dry dropper technique for river brown trout.
At the height of the summer, there's no better way to target river trout than with the deadly combination of dry fly and nymph underneath. Whether they're taking on top or subsurface, Peter Driver will be giving invaluable tips and advice.
For river trout anglers, this will be a must-see webinar on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Tickets cost €10 and go to www.irelandonthefly.com/masterclass to register today.